Hey guys, my coffee's back. It's all's right with the world, right? Here we are, chapter 18, section 4, indoor air pollution. This one's pretty brief, but let's go ahead and take a look at what's there. We're going to talk about indoor air pollutants. Pretty simply, we're talking about smoke, soot, from burning things, fire, coal, whatever in the house, cigarette smoke, and then various chemicals. A lot of chemicals that get used in building materials, cleaning products, etc. This is what tends to cause most of our issues. Now, we can kind of address it in terms of less developed versus more developed countries, because we really do wind up with two distinct different issues. Now, in less developed countries, most of the problems we come just from the indoor burning of wood, charcoal, dung, crop residues, and coal. They're burning it inside their house to keep warm, to cook food. We lived in Nepal, up in the Himalayas. Kind of the classic home had this center hearth. In other words, right in the middle of the home, they had a little fireplace, like an open fire pit. Right above it, there was a hole in the ceiling, and this is where the smoke went out. Well, obviously all the smoke isn't going out the little hole. It kind of goes up and it fills in, and inside of these houses, it was just often kind of smoky and dank in there. And this is what we're talking about, because the central hearth was providing fire to keep the place warm. They didn't have a lot of windows because you wanted to keep the heat in. So they were warming, but then they were also cooking over it. So a lot of times it was just wood and sticks, but sometimes it was this crop residue, like the corn stalks left over. You didn't throw those things away, you held on to them and you could burn them. At night, the only source of light was fire. There wasn't electricity out there. In some places where there is electricity, they can't afford it. So they would burn sticks, kind of like a candle, but just little teeny tiny sticks. They'd light them and that provided enough light to just sort of see faces around in the crowd. So it's just burning stuff inside, but all that smoke's inside and you're breathing it in and inhaling it, and it's not a whole lot different than smoking, some different types of stuff, but still just breathing all this particulate matter, and even still just burning coal. Burning coal is not burning as hot, so it's not burning as completely, giving off carbon dioxide, some carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxides, nitrous oxides, and just the little bits of soot. All of this is just inside. The greatest risk of indoor air pollution comes to the lowest income populations, the people that can't afford electricity or this or that, and they're burning and keeping things in the house, not as much insulation, burning more. The problem gets worse and worse. Now, in more developed countries, then we tend to see a different issue or problem, if you will. Tobacco smoke, if you happen to be in a home or apartment where somebody smokes, well, it's not a fireplace, but they're still smoking and all the chemicals going in. They're smoking and it's bad, but then it's also bad for everybody else, the secondhand smoke. Formaldehyde. Now, formaldehyde is CH2O, carbon attached to a water molecule. But this is formaldehyde. Has a pretty strong smell to it, a chemical, but it causes all kinds of respiratory problems, and it's a known cancer-causing agent. If you're exposed to formaldehyde over a long time, 10, 15, 20 years living inside of a home, then it ups your chance of getting cancer. It's like 1 in 5,000 people that live in homes, and like mobile homes tend to be about the worst, just because a lot of the materials were built using formaldehyde, you're breathing it in all the time. Constant exposure to it ups your chance of getting cancer. Once again, formaldehyde is a known carcinogen, but it's in a lot of things like the wood veneers, what looks shiny, or the wood flooring. It's in press board, and press board is what's inside of a lot of homes. Like you may have press board. Now, in a nice home, you've got press board, and then you've got insulation on the outside, and you've got boarding on top of that, and then you have your press board, and then you've got insulation and drywall. So in some of your nicer homes, you've got press board, but it's pretty much surrounded by enough that you're not exposed to the vapors. Homes that aren't built as well, there's a lot more cracks, there's not as much insulation, and your exposure to the formaldehydes are just much higher. But anyway, these chemicals are in a lot of building materials. And honestly, in homes, we have some, well, I say homes, in buildings, normally it's in big office type buildings. The idea was we want to keep that outside air pollution out from in here. So what we did is we built the buildings, really sealed them up. You can't open the windows because we want to have them all sealed and protected. What happens is people develop what we call sick building syndrome. Sick building syndrome is you go in and actually the air inside is worse than the air outside. The idea of building the buildings was to keep the outside air pollution out. But in reality, we keep bringing chemicals into the building. Some of these big office buildings are going to have a dry cleaner down on the bottom floor maybe. Well, all of the chemicals in the dry cleaning are mixing into the building. They're going into the same ventilation system round and round and round. We're doing renovations on the 4th floor and they're painting in there. Well, the paint thinner, all this stuff, chemicals are leaching into the air and it's getting all around the building. At night, the cleaning crew comes in and they're using ammonia and Windex, and you get the idea, right? All these chemicals are inside the building all the time. Lots of VOCs, you have building materials or formaldehydes are present. All of this stuff together keeps collecting in the building and it never gets ventilated and aired out, and people wind up getting what we call the sick building syndrome. You show to work up on Monday, you feel fine. Late Tuesday, you got a little bit of a headache. Wednesday, you're not feeling as great. Thursday, you're kind of feeling down and irritable. Friday, you're really feeling bad, you go home. Now you're away from it once you get home. And you start feeling better over the weekend, and Sunday you're fine, and you show up at work Monday ready to go, and the system starts over again, and people just get sick building syndrome. It's because the pollution inside the building is worse than outside. What do you do about sick building syndrome? Open up the windows. We've kind of found that actually having more ventilation is better. But some of these buildings, and especially here, like in Florida, down south, where it's hot, it's where it's been worse because we seal them up so we can run the air conditioner all the time. Buildings up north, they usually keep the windows because lots of times of the year, it's really nice to open up because you get really cool air. But once again, more developed countries, this is what we see. Tobacco smoke, chemicals, a lot of times from building supplies, and even stuff we're putting like air fresheners, etc. They're all adding chemicals, a lot of times VOCs. The last one I want to talk about is radon gas. Radioactive radon 222 to be specific. We just really refer to it as radon gas. Now radon gas is emitted from uranium ore. So down deep in the earth, all over the place, we have radioactive elements down deep in the earth. Well, uranium, as it decays, it gives off radon gas. It's a gas, but it's radioactive. And a gas seeps up through the cracks in the ground and makes its way up into the atmosphere. Now, normally in the outside world, radon makes its way up through a little crack in the ground and it seeps out. Well, it goes out into the atmosphere and it gets dispersed so much to where it's just background radiation. We're all exposed to background radiation. It's in such small levels and quantities that it doesn't cause us any harm. But if it winds up coming up into, say, your house or a school building or the office building that you work out, for whatever reason, it's coming up through a crack right underneath your foundation, and it's coming up through a crack in the joint or the seam or a sump pump, all these places right at the bottom, and it leaks into your house. Well, now that it's leaking into your house or into your classroom or into your office building, it's not getting ventilated out, right? There's no cross breeze blowing it away and stirring it up with all the other atmospheric gases, and it keeps getting concentrated and you're breathing it in. Breathing in this radioactive gas leads to cancer. Once again, anything radioactive can be a cancer-causing agent, can be either a carcinogen or a mutagen. And that's what happens. A lot of times also the radon gas will land on a piece of dust or other particle, and you breathe that particle in, and then you're breathing in the radon gas, and it's a particle that's like lodged in your lung now. Is what particle is. It's like somebody that smokes. There's particulate matter mixed in the lungs and sticks there until your body can possibly work it out, and other times it just stays there. But exposure to radon gas. And honestly, less than 20% of like classrooms, office buildings, etc. have been tested for radon. Have you tested for radon in your house? It's a pretty inexpensive kit that you can get to find out if you have dangerous levels of radon in your house. If you do, then you have to find the source and you have to seal the cracks. There's things that you can do to prevent it, because if it can't leak into your house, it spreads out. Outside, not a problem. Inside, it is a problem. So more developed countries, places like the United States, Canada, Europe, etc., tobacco, formaldehyde, and all those other chemicals that go with it, and radon gas. These are our biggest issues and problems. Guys, that wraps it up for section 4. Come back next time and we'll talk about the health effects of air pollution.